G'day everyone, I'm the man called Kemosabe, the man with the plan from the land down under, and this is my review of Dick Fight Island, the only manga I've ever read all the way through. I know there's been some warranted criticism of translators and people who localise the language on anime and video games, but the anglicisation of this book is just about perfect. In Japan, it's known as the Eight Warriors. So yeah, Dick Fight Island is definitely an upgrade. Why did I start reading manga with this particular book? I've long rallied against the idea that manga can replace mainstream American comics. Sure, they can and are replacing them financially, and they can and are replacing them physically in bookstores and comic shops and the collections of consumers, but they can never do the exact specific job mainstream American comics do. Even something like My Hero Academia, said by many to be a love letter to the American superhero comic, still doesn't replace an ongoing monthly Spider-Man or Batman comic. Our love of the medium has as much to do with the characters as the medium itself, and the two mediums, manga and American mainstream comics, are too different to really be an effective substitute for one another when it comes to storytelling. I picked this comic because it's an outrageous idea, a ridiculous idea, an idea that shouldn't work. It's an example of how and why manga is succeeding, by having niche content, something for everyone, whereas the US comic industry is now catering to a very small percentage of its already shrinking fan base. The cover of the book is this image, with a focus on a giant ornate piece of phallic armour. I read the title of the book. I'm not sure what to expect, but I'm not surprised by the cover. This begins a trend of a focus on that part of the male anatomy from the front cover all the way through the book. These guys put the dick into Dick Fight. The book starts with this guy returning home to Palau Yagundu, the untarnished paradise, via helicopter. He jumps from the helicopter and swims to shore. The familiar heat of the area lets him know he is home. Of course, this being a manga, this is all delivered in a clumsy, unaware style full of obnoxious exposition. I believe it's a consequence of Japanese cultural storytelling elements being translated into English that makes this sort of narrative so heavy-handed. The pilot says, "So these are the legendary islands, huh? You sure have an out-of-the-way home, heart." I'm not saying this kind of storytelling is bad. It's just the form manga seems to take. Even in anime, people talk like this in a very unrealistic way, telling characters information they already know. Imagine pulling up at someone's house to drop them off and saying, "So, this is your house, huh?" No shit, it's their house. That's the whole reason you drove them there. The only reason for the pilot to say these lines is to convey information to the reader. These islands are remote, legendary, even mythical, and someone called Hart lives there. That same person is on the chopper and on his way home. So Hart is actually the main character, and he dives into the water from the chopper. He says, "This heat, yeah, I'm home." This is so you know this is his homeland. You see, it's all forced expositionary stuff. Then on the next page he says, "As if I wouldn't return home after being chosen." So now you know he's one of the chosen, whatever that is. I wonder if there's a manga equivalent of Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, something that deconstructs the conventions of manga and explains why they are the way they are. I'm 2 pages in and the manga way of relaying information and storytelling is already making me want to stop reading. But the book's called Dick Fight Islands, and so far we've only seen islands. We haven't seen any dicks or fights, so we'll push onwards. At the front of the book is a page labelled Easy Who's Who, where each of the fighters is shown and a little blurb tells you something of their personality and motivations. This is all ringing alarm bells for me. This stuff should all come out through the story, through dialogue and interactions. Show, don't tell, must not translate well into Japanese. The other thing about this who's who is the fighters aren't really shown. It's their penis armour that's shown, their ornate sheaths, I guess. I didn't expect War and Peace from this book, but it's becoming clear this is just wank bait, soft-core cheesecake for gay dudes or the sort of women that like watching gay porn. If it were about the characters, we'd see their faces so we could recognise them. I'd have an easier time telling a brunette from a blonde or a clean-shaven bloke from a bearded man than trying to tell one set of dick plate from another. Look at this one. Chief of the Earth Clan, well regarded by everyone. That's the sort of thing that you should show in the story. Even if it's as simple as someone mentioning how the Earth Clan chief gets along with everyone, or how the Earth Clan hasn't been at war with any other clan for the longest time because they're so well regarded. Don't just dump this on a page at the beginning and expect me to remember it, especially when you haven't linked this information to the character's actual appearance. So Hart runs up the beach and embraces these 2 guys that he knows, and I swear I had to read these pages like 6 times to work out who was who. They all kind of look the same. They're all sort of, like fit blonde dudes, so I wasn't sure who was talking to who. Instead of having the characters call each other by name so we can put a name to the face, they have little scrolls appear and label these side characters. I don't like that. It pulls me out of the story. Not that the story is especially engaging. They talk about Hart's time away in the outside world, our world assumably, and how he has changed as a consequence of that. There's a bit here where the main character says, "You guys are such good friends." He says that despite these guys bickering the whole time. Again, it's telling, not showing. Considering this is a contest where guys rub their armoured penises against one another in mock battles, How can we not intuit that good friends means they'll be lovers by the end of the book? More fighters arrive and their little backstories and dramas pair them up for wholesome monogamous gay relationships by the book's end. The guy from the Healer clan has history with the guy from the Dragon clan. The Dragon clan guy was seriously injured at some point in the past and the medicine provided by the Healer guy minimised the damage. Dragon guy lost an eye, but it could have been worse, we assume. We actually do get to see the rest of the fighters giving respect to the chief of the Earth clan. This scene where they all bow and treat him with reverence is enough to show that he is well respected and well regarded. It didn't need to be said in a confusing dick montage at the beginning of the book. The Earth chief, who's a more mature bloke, is interested in the Moon clan's champion because they are or they look ageless, so looks like DILFs get their time to shine in this book as well. There's also this very young fighter. It's some pretty sketchy shit, Japan. Despite some odd fashion ideas, all the island clans see having an exposed arse as a sign of manliness for reasons. It's all been pretty tame stuff so far. No dicks, no fights, just islands. But that's about to change. The fighters have to change into their armour for the start of the formal ceremony. We're treated to a montage of half-dressed dudes donning dick armour. The Earth Clan chief's helpers complain that they can't get his sheath on and asked if he's somehow gotten thicker since the last tournament. I wish I'd reviewed this live. My reactions would have been legendary. I actually forgot a lot of this book since I first read it. We then get a double-page spread of all the fighters in their armour as an elder official explains the whole story to us, I guess. It must be us he's explaining it to. Surely he's not explaining it to the fighters. They all know why they're there, right? Like, they know their own history and the history of the islands. I forgot that I have to read a manga backwards, so these pages didn't make a lot of sense at first. These designs look pretty convoluted. Work scolds have been complaining about boob plate, Red Sonja, and the lack of sensible shoes for years now. I mean, this is the same thing, but it's just for the gays. They actually look kind of like Monster Hunter armor designs to me. And I do like ornate over-the-top armors and designs well enough, but there's something to be said for practicality and functionality, just not in this book. So we're told that the victors of the contest rule the islands for 4 years uncontested. Like an American presidential election with more dicks. Or maybe the same amount of dicks. At the end of the last contest, the leaders of the Jewel and Healer clans decided rather than fighting for a single victor, they'd rule together as a couple. Once we get this backstory, the Twin Kings announce they've eliminated 2 fighters before the contest has even started. They kick out the kid because he's too young.
Right.
And they eliminate Hart because he filled in his application to the contest in the outsider's language and nobody could read it. Hart claims he's brought secret techniques from the outside world that will assure him victory. And the kid insists he's just small for his age and he's trained as hard and long, bad choice of words, as the others. The kings relent and allow them to battle one another to see who stays in the contest. There's an odd splash page here with the Fang clan is shown to be matriarchal with very few men born into their ranks, and as such, lesbian relationships are common.
Okay. Cool. No doubt.
This is definitely my favourite page in the whole book. The Jewel and Fang champions face off, and, you know, in a cooking manga where people fight with cooking techniques, all their skills and attacks would be based on cooking and food, kitchen utensils, you know. Look at the fighters in Kung Fu Hustle. The haberdasher used curtain rings to enhance his punch strength. The cooking mama used giant pots and pans and stuff like that. You got to wonder what sort of technique will a penis-centric class of fighters use. I mean, it's called Dick Fight Island after all. So the Fang champion, he's called Tailing because he has a tail weapon. He uses it like a whip, and he wraps it around Hart's dick armour, and then he strums the whip, causing pulsing vibrations. I'm not making this shit up. We're only 28 pages into the story. It's 200 pages long. Some dude created a deepest lore 200-page long King of Iron Fist tournament with dicks instead of the devil gene. What the hell, Japan? The other fighters do that thing you see in nearly every battle/fighting/contest anime and manga where they explain the attacks and techniques of the other fighters out loud. It must be for our benefit. I hate that shit. Unless it's happening in a Uno battle, then it's Kino.
Ha! Looks like you won't be losing any more cards soon. With this!
That card!
It's a draw 2 card. Once that card is placed down, it forces the next player to draw 2 more cards in their hand, gaining more cards and putting them at a disadvantage.
That kid, he knew what to do, and found the perfect opportunity to strike. Now this match is starting to get real interesting.
Just 2 cards left. If all goes well in the next few turns, then my victory is assured. All I need from him now is a card that matches its color or its number.
I'm not letting you go that easily, foolish boy. I want to see your cute face break into tears.
What?
Behold your demise! You lose a turn with this skip card!
This is bad.
Oh, but that's not all, my boy. Once Yanagi finishes her turn, I'll surprise him with this! The Wild Draw 4! With 6 cards in his hand and mine with only 1, he wouldn't stand a chance! I can't wait to wipe that irritating grin off his face, once and for all!
Hart flips the script by flipping Tailing over and, I'm not kidding, introducing him to anal sex right there in front of everyone. This is his secret technique, the old backtrack attack. While the objective of the battle is to make your opponent orgasm, it seems these guys have, for generations, been doing it by... Why don't I review this book? They rub their dicks together, which is why they wear armour over that part of their body. Hart, having spent time in our world, learned about packing fudge and is now planning on showing all the fighters how it's done. I don't know if gay dudes are turned on by this sort of thing, or if they'd be angry about being portrayed as such shallow stereotypes. Or is this stuff all really created for a female audience, like I've heard? The author cuts to crashing waves on the beach as a visual metaphor for what's happening to the Fang champion. I bet that's because he looks so young. The artist couldn't draw this dude that looks like he's 12 getting, butt banged on the beach in front of a dozen other blokes and get away with it. So they got to cut away. Because there's plenty of porno stuff later on, they don't shy from this. I think this is a way for them to get around the fact that they know this guy looks so young. The same people that bang on about consent think that this is empowering and gives visibility to the gays in storytelling. But the Mary Sue raved about this manga, so it must be good, otherwise you're a bigot. Hart explains what a prostate gland is. Seriously, he says his roommate in college taught him this technique. We then cut to that same roommate desperately trying to make his way to the island to stop Hart from competing in the tournament, assumably because he's in love with him. Man, it gets even wilder from here. So a bunch of the other fighters are asking Hart to show them this new technique in between battles. It's mentioned that Hart used his fingers rather than his penis to win the last battle. I guess he's saving his virtue, for lack of a better word, for his roommate, who he secretly loves as well. One of the other fighters, just drops trowel right there and asks someone else, I can't tell if it's Hart or not because they all look the fucking same, to finger bang him so he can learn to resist the new technique and win the fight. Because if he wins, he gets to marry one of the other fighters from another clan or something. I don't know, this story's a mess. I don't know if I can't tell who they all are because there's no colour to help visually differentiate the characters, like in some of the later issues of The Walking Dead, or if they're all drawn too similar because the artist has a type they want to see rubbing dicks on the page, or if it's just because I'm not invested in the story. I mean, I was reviewing this as a joke, but I'm not having fun. Hart reveals he has a tube of lube built into his dick armor so he can slide on in when he needs to. Forget Batman, this is what real prep time looks like, people. Man, I wish I was reading a cooking manga right now, or a soccer manga, or like a barista war manga, anything but this. So we're still getting pages of lore, such as it is. The Worm Tournament moniker comes from the likening of the meeting of manhoods to the wrestling of pythons. There are single pages every now and then explaining the story and the world as needed. The author's done some world building. It's not great, but he's put more effort into the clans and the history and the economics of it all than just making a dozen different gay dudes rub their dicks on each other for fun and profit. The Jewel clan has the best technology because the jewels they mine from their island are traded with the outside world, which gives them access to our technology. The Earth clan are the best potters and brickmakers, and they have special ceramic armor that is difficult to break. The armour on their dicks, their dick armour. I think the two guys that Hart was talking to at the start of the book, the ones who identified as good friends, they have to face off against each other in the first real battle of the tournament. It's pretty obvious that they're in love with each other. And look, my review on this book was based on incomplete memories I had on it. I read this manga months ago and then forgot about it. The main point of the review was based on a flawed idea. I didn't remember that they actually had any explicitly sexual stuff in here. I thought it was all just soft-core cheesecake. But these dudes are just full-on pounding each other right here on the sand in front of a crowd of thousands of people before they profess their love to one another and agree to move in together. So now it feels like I'm reading a modern Marvel comic. The ageless fighter gets beaten by the Earth Clan chief in a subplot where the Earth chief wants to take one of the current kings as his lover, and the two kings hope the ageless fighter will entice the chief to hook up with him instead. The healer guy gets his salad tossed by the Dragon Clan guy, but uses magic to let himself be possessed by a demon that gives him the strength to win the fight, and the Dragon dude's heart is broken because he loves the healer clan dude as the demure fellow that he normally is, not as the demonic fighter that he just lost to. Hart's roommate/boyfriend is getting closer to the tournament, then we see a flashback showing how the two got together in the first place as roommates at university. As fighters get eliminated, their relationships and backstories get more and more intertwined, but I can't follow them closely enough to be sure what's going on. I'm really not sure who is who. It's a real flaw when a character shaving off their beard makes them identical to everyone else and throws the whole cast into disarray. Hart and the Earth Chief have to fight each other in the final battle. Hart doesn't want to use his special technique on the Chief because he realises he's in love with his roommate and only wants to touch him like that ever again. The Earth Chief notices Hart's heart isn't in it, and he challenges one of the two kings to a battle for the crown as a revenge for his loss to that same guy 4 years ago in the last tournament, I think. I'm really not sure because they really do all look the same. They're all the same lithe, twinky muscle dudes. At least Dragon Ball Z has crazy hairstyles to help differentiate one character from another. Oh, wait. I really don't know what happened in the final battle. It's a weird mishmash of limbs and butts and half-censored erections, and I'm not sure who anyone is talking about, and the Earth Chief loses somehow, and the old king retains his crown, and then the whole crowd just disperses. The tournament ends, and there's like 16 pages of all the characters hooking up and pairing off post-tournament. Without their armour, it's even harder to tell who's who. The story just kind of ends on a series of flat jokes and dick shots. At the end of the book, there's a kind of information page where I was surprised to discover 3 things about this story. 1, it's the start of a larger story arc. This is volume 1. 2, the author is actually female. And 3, the book has an M for mature rating. Now in Australia, the M rating is for people 15 years and over. I sure as shit wouldn't be giving this book to a 15-year-old. I guess the rating system is different in Japan or the US, wherever this translated scan was from. So, it's over. What did I think of the book? It was confusing. I'm confused. My main point of this review was going to be, I was going to say, who is this for? It's not porn, it's not a real story. The characters are caricatures, and you can predict the so-called character arcs from the first 10 pages. There wasn't a single thing that happened in this book. Like some of the, weird dick sex techniques certainly surprised me, but none of the story surprised me. I was able to pick who was going to hook up with who within the first 10 pages of the story. But this book is also porn. There's some censoring, but it's really just a token effort. You see dick in butt, dick in mouth, dick against other dick. It's a full-on porno with a very predictable, but kind of solid, if inane, story. And that's the weirdest thing about it. If it wasn't a story about just dudes loving on each other and the fights were real fights, not, sword fights, if you know what I mean, it'd be more readable. But strangely, probably much less successful. Dick Fight Island was the #1 selling comic in the romance manga on Amazon in 2021. It got rave reviews. But the reviews were all kind of odd too. The ones I read, and I read a few of them because I researched this shit, so hit the like button and subscribe to make my pain worthwhile. All the reviews sort of treated this book like a joke. They said that the premise was over the top and ridiculous, but the deep plots and character interaction grounded the book and made it more interesting and engaging than it should have been. They already had low standards for this book. They all agreed that if it wasn't for the romance and the gay sex, they wouldn't have even read the manga. So what do these reviewers expect from this? From a book called Dick Fight Island? What do people who buy it expect? I guess the thing I can't get my head around is the idea that it's not strictly porn because there's too much story, and it's not a story because there's too much porn. Are the people looking for well-drawn gay porn disappointed by all the story, and are the people who want complex relationship drama mixed with a battle manga put off by all the dicks? I don't know. The art's great, but there's a few instances of traced backgrounds, and even one I think is just a straight-up photocopy of an African savanna pasted in the background. Mostly I just see wasted potential. This author is making the book she wants to make, and it's a bestseller, and she's getting rave reviews. I mean, that's the definition of success. I could only hope my books are that successful. She's also the author of a dozen other mangas about dudes banging dudes. This book is 200 pages long. I can't help but imagine what 200 pages of ink and paper and scripting are publishing, if channeled towards something more aligned with my own interest, could produce. I was going to pretend that I believed that this was a good representation of all manga, and that I assumed that all manga was pretty much like this, but I know that's not true. This is the very definition of niche, the very definition of it wasn't made for you. It wasn't made for me. It wasn't. I don't feel enriched by reading this. I didn't learn anything. I didn't grow as an author from reading this manga. This didn't entertain me, but I guess that's okay. It's not meant to. It's made for whatever niche likes this specific amalgam of gay porn and relationship drama and a dick-centric Kumite-style setting. The book exists and it has found its readership. There is a kind of purity to that paradigm that is lacking in the mainstream US comic industry. I'm not saying they should start producing porn. That's been tried and it was terrible. But the big two could do a lot worse than giving the people what they want instead of telling them how to think. While I wasn't entertained, Dick Fight Island is entertainment, pure and simple. It's not propaganda, it doesn't have any agenda other than to titillate and entertain, and in that way, strangely, I have to say it is superior to a lot of what I see the mainstream producing these days, which is about as damning a condemnation of those once austere publishers as I can muster.